Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, everyone. Welcome to this webinar. Today, we will be talking about smart metering benefits and implementations. For those who don't know me, my name is Marcelo. I am Tagoya content editor, and with me today, I have Thiago Lima, one of our customer success manager. Right. Before we jump right to the agenda, I would like to remind you all that our chat is open. So please say hi, say where you are watching us from, and if you have any questions, we also have the Q&A where you can ask any question that you have during the webinar, and we will answer them out at the end of the presentation. The Q&A, it's located on the chat. There is a right bar there on the right side, by the way, and there you can ask all your questions. So without further ado, let's jump to the agenda. First, we'll get an overall of smart metering, jump into types of smart metering devices, submetering, hardware and connectivity, advantages of smart metering, getting to the 6 points, where we will tell you how Taguayo can facilitate the deployment of smart meters or your application. And at the end, a live demo. Right. So without further ado, I would like to pass it to you, Thiago.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Marcelo, for the introduction. For those who don't know me, pleasure to meet you. My name is Thiago. I'm a CSM here, like Marcelo said, here at Tago.io. Would like to thank everybody that devoted a little bit of time to being on this webinar today to talk about smart metering. Before we start, I just wanted to say that this conversation does not have to end here. At the end of this webinar, I'll leave my email on the chat so you can get in touch with me if you have a particular case that you're working in regards to smart meter, energy meter, water meter. Let's talk about it. Let's see how we can help you out there. Be happy to help. All right, so let's get onto the topics of the smart meter, right? So a smart meter is a device that can measures your energy consumption, your gas, your water consumption. You have series of advantages when combining that with the submeter and data loggers, leak detectors, and I'm gonna talk a little bit about that too because it's just not the smart meter per se. It's a great beginning, but there are a lot of other factors that we can aggregate to the smart meter and bring a lot of features, not a lot of features, but features that add great value to the end product, right? So some of the benefits of the work meet the smart meter is, of course, you can save money by switching to a cheaper tariff or reducing your consumption. You can help the environment by using less energy and supporting more renewable sources. You can access more services and offers from your suppliers, such as prepayment or time of use tariffs. There are some challenges, of course, to this process. You may need to update wiring on your appliances to make them compatible with the smart meters. You may experience some technical issues or delays in installation and communication. The install part may not be so easy, but it's the end result that is important, right? There is also, in terms of privacy and security, the concerns of how your data is collected and used. But in this case, for example, for let's say measuring water on a condominium, right? That's a great example because what I see today is mostly, I still see today cases where water, energy, and gas, they are sometimes split it equally. The bill, right? Split it equally on a particular condominium, and the high demand for today is to create a solution for that, right? But it goes a little bit beyond of smart meters, and I'm going to share some example with you guys on my live demo as well. I'm going to show an example of a smart meter, smart water meter application, so you can understand how that works, where you can access that, so you can jumpstart, and also some of the benefits that are included with it, right? So let's jump right through it. So meters that are currently out there, that we see that they are on a high demand and are the ones that deserves our attention. So first of all, energy meters, right? They can measure the amount of electricity that is consumed either by a household or a building. Send data to the utility company or a particular smart grid that you're on. It can not just manage the consumption, but if you're using the right devices, it can even restore the power through a generator or keep the power running, for example, for a hospital, or for a particular industry or in a condominium. And also allows you to split the billing, right? When combining with submeters and data loggers that I'm going to get in a little bit. And then we have water meters, right? Water meters, they have the same syntax. However, they can work in a couple different ways. They can just measure the flow of water. They're just a type A device, right? They're measuring the flow of water. They're sending up links constantly, calculating your consumption. And when you combine that for one household, that's fine, right? So you have 1 meter for a household. That should be enough. You have a couple liters leak detectors here and there, and that would work. But what would happen if you are in this condominium scenario, right? So if you get that energy, water, and gas meters combined with the submetering, then you have a much a broad view of what's going on there. And I'm going to share some of the benefits of that in a little bit, right? So, and I've also put together a diagram so you can understand the flow, the access levels, and what we can generate from having that information together. Data loggers are also very important. They can record and store various types of data. So they can store temperature, humidity, pressure, light, sound, and send to a cloud service, or a local computer or the gateway, so they can forward that information over to us, right? So let's look at the submetering. So how this is architecture right here. So this is a scenario that I put together. It does not always work like this. It could, right? But let's understand what we have here in place. So we have our supply source. So imagine we're talking about energy now, right? We have our supply source connected to an utility meter that could be either on south building or the east building that we see on our left, right? So now we have sensors connected to each apartment inside a particular building, right? So what does that mean? I have an utility meter that will let me know all the energy that's coming through the supply source, and the information that's going through the buildings. And I also have that same information for each one of the apartments that I have on my organization, right? That my customer has. And this would be a perfect case for a condominium, for example. So we have a supply source connected to the south building. You see how much energy is coming through in total. And then for each apartment, we'll have the measurement to see how much is each unit consuming in terms of energy, right? We'll forward that information to the gateway. The gateway will communicate with the LNS, and the LNS will brings the information that we need to the cloud application, where we're going to build our access rules, the dashboards that we want to show, and they can be very specific, right? So I have here on the right side administrator, east building supervisor, and tenant south building apartment. So what are those? Those are different permissions that we can have within an IoT application. So let's picture the administrator as the owner of the application. So that will be you guys, right? So you're monitoring this entire thing. Your customer, the primary person on the board, is monitoring this entire thing. Or the super, for example, right? Let's think about a condominium in specific. So he will have access to the south building, the east building, all the apartments, the sensors, all the way to the endpoint, right? The east building supervisor, he would have access only to his particular building. So maybe these are not the same client, they are two different clients. So what you need here is an access rule that would allow him to access only south building or only east building, or both of them, right? And then finally we have the tenant. So the tenant will have access to get the information from his particular sensors inside his apartment. So I can generate a report for the entire building. The administrator or the supervisor could do that, or I could and I could also have a report generated for my end user, right? So he can see, oh, this is the amount of water that I expend. This is the amount of gas. This is the amount of energy, right? And what is the differential when you're doing that? I see like a lot of cases today where everything's split it equally: gas, water, and energy. And that's not the optimal way to go, right? The optimal way to go is to be fair with also other users living on that particular condominium or building or community that have each their particular bill, right? So this tenant, he expend this amount of energy, this amount of water, this amount of gas, he's going to pay for that, right? And then we can use that information, right? At a super level, at an administrator level, we could use that information to forecast the costs, right? And do a series of other things that I'm also going to talk about that are the key benefits of why putting this solution together, right? Adding a smart meter here, add a submetering there, add a couple leak detectors, put a complete solution, solve the problem for the customer, right? That's the end goal, and keep it lean. And then on this particular part, hardware and connectivity, this is a great point to touch bases of it because I talk to customers on an everyday basis, right? And I've worked on plenty of meter and submeter solutions for water, electricity, and the challenges are finding a sensor that will solve your problem, right? And it's not just, of course, connectivity is very important. What is the most cost effective, available, and reliable server that you have near to you that the device supports that's going to be cost effective, right? Is the device is going to bring the variables that you need to put your solution together? Is he solving the customer's problems, right? Because sometimes you have a water meter there, it's just measuring the flow. That's what it does, and that's what the customer needs. Great, but sometimes you need the water meter. Let's figure for a second here. If you need to shut down the water, right? If it's a prepaid system, for example, if it's a prepaid system, you need a Type C device because you need to be able to send a downlink back to the device and say, hey, this customer has gone to all 200 liters of water a month he had prepaid. So now we're going to shut the water uh, by sending a command through the application. So that's one example of what Type C devices could do. Upon a leak, for example, if you have a leak sensor there that could detect a potential leak on that particular unit, you can even do that automatically. You send an alert to the end user. By the time the end user views that alert, the water is already shut. There's no water leaking anywhere. Leaked a little bit, the sensor capture, the platform sends a command to shut it down. So this is event disaster, and this is another topic that I want to jump to you guys about. Same things happen with gas. Let's say you left the building and you left one of the gas uh, switches open on the oven. So you never know when the situations are going to happen. So if you have a leak detector there, you can also do that automatically. It starts leaking all over the place. Platform catches that information. You have a script ready to go that will treat that, turned off the gas for that particular unit. Now, you could not do that if you only had 1 meter at the front of the building measuring the whole thing for everybody. But if you have that submetering and those leak detectors around, you could potentially prevent many disaster, anticipate things from happening. So selecting a device, selecting a network that'll be cost effective, that'll have coverage, that is reliable, it's a key factor before moving forward to building an IoT solution. Because then you have everything you need. You say, here, this is what the device that I'm going to use. I'm going to use this network right here. Now I need to work on Toggle. Now you reach out to me and we'll work that together, right? I'll understand your device. I'll understand where you're coming from, what is the problem you're trying to solve, and we'll try to put a solution together for your customer that aggregates a lot of value, right? So some advantages, like I mentioned, is the first one, um, not in priority, but manage it and reduce consumption, right? Because when you provide this tool for the customer that they can monitor their own water, they can monitor the electricity and gas, it's a different story. Because for example, what am I used to? I'm used to getting my bills. I get my electricity bill. I look at it. I'm like, okay, is a little more than last month, or is a little less, or it's much more. But why is much more. I don't have that information. I don't know where I missed, right? Maybe I left the hose on the garden open for a long time during a particular day and I didn't notice that, right? So you can build something very specific for like forecasting, which is topic two, right? So first, forecasting is you evaluate over a certain period of time, let's say 6 months to a year or more if possible, what is the average daily consumption for that particular unit or for the condominium, right? So this user, he's used to consume 20 liters of water a day. So you can create a threshold and say, hey, I'm going to put an alert here just so we can protect you, keep the water lean. Uh, After it's over a threshold of 20 liters, we're going to send you an alert. If it's still moving, if it's still running, if it's still after 30 liters running and expanding, we're going to shut down the valve. So you can create scenarios like this that would help you and help your customer to keep the consumption low, right? So these are action that can be taken automatically just by having a nice project architecture put together, right? And with this, you reduce the costs. You are environmentally friendly. You can do this with gas. You can do this with energy. You can do this with water, right? So what is the nudge? The nudge is the initial investment, but then when you start to think about what you can do, if event disaster, for example, think about that. You have an apartment, you have a summer home or an apartment that you visit every once a year. A lot of people that are used to, I'm not going to use this for a little while, so I'm going to turn off the energy, turn off the gas and the lights, and I'll just leave the water, everything shut, and that's okay. But what if it's the other way around? What if you don't do that and then you're subjected, for example, sometimes it's not even your building, sometimes the apartment on top starts leaking, comes off your, the top of your floor, and then you come 6 months, 6 months later, and it's a nightmare, it's a mess. So these are things that you can anticipate, right? If you have a whole system like this on the building, this will never happen. At the first sign of a leak, the sensor will shut off the valves, will send an email to the super, and the problem, the people could be proactive with it. They can jump on it, they can call you, say, hey, the apartment on top of you had a leak, this and this and this happened. What do we do? The action is this. So what do you want us to do? So things like that, right? And that's an example with water, but with gas is also serious, right? So if you leave the gas open and then you will go away, and what is monitoring that? So aggregating other sensors like leak detectors and gas detectors and CO2 detectors, they're also vital, to putting in a nice application together. But having a smart meter with the sub meter, it's definitely a game changer. So that's very important to have in mind. And then finally, it's the unit billing management, right? Because now I'm gonna have a bill for customer A, customer B, customer C, apartment 123, right? And they'll have access to that as well. So they be aware of they are expanding in real time. The problem that I had before, I'm checking my bill, it's $200 higher than last month, and I have no clue where that came from. They will not have that because they will able to see a graphic. See here, in this particular day, in this particular time, there was a peak on your water consumption or your energy consumption, and you'll be able to take action right away. So empowers the user. It's an application that empowers the user that he's going to be glad to use constantly to monitor the water flow, keeping it below the thresholds, generating alerts, and being proactive with the results, right? So this is a quick example of how the flow would work. In this case, we're talking edge, right? So we have our sensors here on the bottom left. We have the thermometer, the machinery, the forklift there. So those are sensors that are sending information, and they are controllable. So let's look at them as type C, right? So I am in my edge computer gateway, receive the information from the sensor and send it to the platform. So what can I do from there? Let's say I detected a high temperature on a particular, let's say a room full of IoT full of IT servers, right? And I'm monitoring the temperature there. The temperature is getting really high, really high, um, and I'm not there, so I can adjust the configurations properly to keep the room cold enough, right? So I can just send that command through my application, and that'll forward the information back to my sensor. I'll send the downlink for to adjust the AC's temperature, right? And I could do that if I have a Type C device. I could shut down the water. I can turn on and off the lights. So these are all features that makes our life easier. So I can integrate that with the third party system, configure billing, report KPIs, and some other things, right? There's a lot of resources that we can do within the cloud platform using all that sensors information, and then I'll forward that to my end customer, to the particular enterprise. So some of the metering features, like I mentioned, they're on Taguayo, they're ideal for submetering and metering, right? Combining those two, empowering the customer, getting control over management. So generating invoices, generating billing, generating custom PDF reports, right? Like I mentioned, you could have a report for the tenants, you can have a report for the building super, for the condominium super, or the board, and all those things. Generate alerts by email, SMS, push notification. You can integrate with the call center, have individual visualizations for each one of those users, having multiple organizations inside one application. So I will be able to show this on my live demo in a little bit. That's the good stuff, where you can actually use only one application for series of customers, right? And inside a particular customer, you can have multiple buildings, you can have multiple sensors. So that's the main idea. And adding your own BI, your advanced analytics on top of that, so you can export that information, to a Grafana or to a BI, or you do it within Toggle, so you can do more customized and robust forecasting tools, so you can kind of anticipate the billing for future years or future months based on the current consumption. So here we can generate reports in PDF, CSV. We can email to run users. You can white label the application, add your company logo, all fully customizable, right? You can store reports on the files module, which is inside Taguayo. You can download it later. You can send it directly to the user. You can do you can do different reports, right? You can do a basic report, you can do a detailed report, you can do an audible report. So these are all features that are very modular and highly customizable by the user. And here are some things that we can bring to aggregate to that particular solution, right? So where do we stand on how we can help you guys to get there and to this particular model? So first is identify why it will work for your customer. Like I mentioned on my first slides, understanding what is the best device for that particular case, what is the coverage and network that you have available, what would be the most cost-effective way. Put two or three simulations together, see how much the device is going to cost you with the platform, and that's something that I can help you with. Kickstarter app. We do have a water meter Kickstarter already, but for energy and for gas metering, we can use the original Kickstarter, which is the general Kickstarter app. You can use that Kickstarter to expand to any vertical, and you have a whole documentation supporting on how you expand from there. So that's a great tool for you to get started. If you want to put a mock-up, a first version together, and get you started, that's a great way to go. You can have features on the beginning, like onboarding sensors using a QR code, so you don't have to go there and do one by one, type the UI. Sometimes you have 10 or 15 sensors on your hand. It'll be much easier just scanning the QR code and plugging them to the platform. But what if you have 200s of sensors, right? So then we have features as well. For example, the bulk imports tool, that it's on our website, on our dashboard templates page. ready to go. You can download it and you can import hundreds of devices at the time. So that facilitates a lot when you're working with large quantities, right? Condominium with a lot of houses, you have a lot of different meters to plug, and so on. You can visualize data depending on each scenario, right? If you're industry, you stay to the like the light side, we see on the left side, we have that dark theme, or something more interactive, more dark mode, like in the middle for tracking and things. On the right side for TLS, you can customize the application according to the colors of your company or what it will make sense to your particular application. And just a reminder, we have some of these templates ready to go with all the theme, everything put together on our website on under dashboard templates as well. So if you want to download a free template, see how that works, you want to reverse engineer it, use it for your case, great. So now I'm going to share my screen so I can go through some of the features that we have inside of the water meter application in this case. So bear with me just for a couple more minutes. I hope you can see my screen. All right. So here I am on my admin page. So here we can see a lot of different customers inside my application, right? In this case, it's condominium list. But let's understand this as they were different customers because in this structure they are. I'm gonna navigate to a particular building, like I have here, Veneza building. And I can see on my map the locations of the three buildings that I got. So North Tower, South Tower, and East Tower. So they're located right there. I can see it on a map. I can click on a particular building and see what information is coming through. So I selected the condominium, the client Veneza building. And inside that Veneza building, I have three buildings, right? I have the East Tower, the North Tower, and the South Tower. So in this case, I selected the South Tower, and I can see that it has two apartments registered there. The type is residential, so let me pump through. And now I am inside the apartment list. So I've navigated through condominium, building, and apartment. Remember that I talked a little while ago, that you could create different access management for each one of these sectors. So here how it works. The administrator of the application, he will have access to all customers. You could create a particular access level for also a tower, a location inside the particular customer, because that customer may have not just one condominium with three towers, but he may be a customer that have lots of condominiums, right? So you could lower the level and you can say condominium A, condominium B, condominium C. So I selected East Tower, and inside East Tower, I have apartments. So here, my first access level would be of administrator. Here would be like tower supervisor or building supervisor. At the end would be the end user, the tenant, right? So I'm going to show in a little bit how those rules are put together. And then finally, I'm going to select one of my meters. I can see that I only have one meter register here, which is my main flow sensor. So now I have my dashboard here. I can see the current consumption, the consumption history, the system status, and the monthly consumption for that particular unit, right? This is a main flow sensor. I can have other sensors here. For example, I could have a leak detector on the dishwasher or on the sink. I could have an outlet sensor to see how much water is coming in, how much water is coming out, so we can calculate the waste. And this particular access would be of the end user, right? So the end users would have access to all meters inside their apartment, and the condominium administrator would have access to all of this structure, right? So this is made within inside the application, right? I would invite a user here. Will be simply as giving a name, an email, and password, and I would select, would this be a super admin? Would he be able to see all the clients that I have on the application? If I have a devoted architect to be looking at this application, it would make sense, right? Unless that's if that's not the scenario, then we could go forward with the condominium admin. So the condominium admin is the customer. So the customer will only be able to see his hierarchy onward, right? His buildings, his apartments. And then we have dweller. Dweller is the tenant, right? So I could select it here inside Vanessa building, inside South Tower, on the apartment 2C, I will have John Doe here. He will be the tenant for this particular apartment. And when he logs in, he's going to see his apartment and all of the meters registered to that apartment. He can pull a PDF for his water consumption. Uh, you can add energy, you can add gas, other types of smart meters as well, and give and have control of their current consumption. What is the expected billing based on the current consumption, and have this forecasting on hands. Like I mentioned, it's a control that you have, so you can anticipate some problems, right? And not just end up with, let's say you paid normally $200 of water a month, end up with a $500 bill and don't know what to do with that, don't know where that happened and when that happened. So you can avoid such things from happening. And using scripts, smart scripts can help you automate these kind of things. Like I said, you could add a threshold. I don't want to expend more than 30 liters of water a day. If it does, I want to shut down the valve and I want to receive an alert and I want to know where it's coming from. You can anticipate this sort of things, and this is what aggregates value to the application. It's the whole thing about empowering the customer to have such things in place, right? And not just show the consumption and this and that, because that we know that today it's important as well, but having these features on place aggregates a lot of value to the application. So Marcelo, I think I'm done on my side with the presentation. Do we have any questions on the Q&A?
Okay, thank you, Thiago. It's always nice to take a deep dive on one of the
Sure.
verticals of IoT, right? And there are so many. On this case,
Absolutely.
smart metering. For now, we don't have any questions, but I would like to remind you all that we're constantly hosting webinars. So we have the industry webinars, we have technical webinars, and I believe next month we'll be hosting a 2 day training, right? 2 half-day training, focusing on Tagoyo and all of our advanced features. So you all are invited to participate. You can take a look at our Tagoyo dash events, right, and see them out there. And also, please, if you don't have a Tagoyo account, you can create one. It's free. And you can also join our learning center where you will learn all the things you need to use Tagoyo. So that was all for today, folks. Have a nice week, and I see you all.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate your time. See you next time.